Hey, I'm Chef Erin. I'm new here at atbbq.com, and today we're going to be making pumpkin focaccia. We do have a couple of different ways to prepare it, and I'm really excited about the outcome because it's our first fall day. Focaccia is one of those breads that's been around for forever, but the first thing we absolutely need to do is get our yeast blooming, and then we can talk about all of our ingredients. Now, scaling our ingredients is going to start every single time with blooming the yeast. We want to do this with essentially warm water. Now, warm for me just means from the tap. This recipe calls for 1.5 teaspoons of yeast and 350 grams of water. I'm just making sure that all of our yeast is hydrating and wet, because if it's not wet, they won't wake up. Dry mix for focaccia is pretty simple. We're gonna start with a little bit of turmeric, and that's mostly for color. There's salt in here that you can't see, unfortunately, because of the color of this beautiful bread flour. And I just want to make sure that all that turmeric gets mixed in. And like I said, it's not really for flavor. Turmeric has a nice earthy flavor which will complement the pumpkin, but that's more for color. You can see how bright and yellow it was. The wet's surprisingly easy as well. We've got a little bit of olive oil, maple syrup, and pumpkin puree. We are going to be adding our yeast mixture to this, and I like to do this with gloves instead of with a spatula, because why make another thing dirty? Lastly, we're going to be adding our yeast mixture. Let's mix it up, make it nice and smooth. Smoother it is here, the easier it is going to be mixing into our dries. All of our dries are going to go into our wets, and I know that most of the time the recipe is going to tell you put your wets into your dries. Bread's a little bit easy though. You can absolutely just keep working until it all grabs everything. I like to keep an open hand, almost like a claw, and really comb my way through the sides and the bottom of the bowl. As we hydrate, everything's going to turn that beautiful orange, and you're going to see that shagginess develop. Shagginess is great, but what we want is gluten strands to start talking to each other and making all of those connections. That's going to happen with more and more activity. So stretching and squishing is our friend. Now this is going to be a very hydrated dough. It looks wet right now, but it's not very hydrated because it hasn't been resting. The rest is where the hydration comes in and you get that really good wobble. Right now it kind of looks like really fatty cake batter. Now that our batter has been fully mixed, we're going to add a little bit of olive oil to our original bowl. Oil it up and also oil our hands. Just grab our dough. I like to make sure that she's nice and oiled before we let her go. And I'm also just going to put a tiny bit over the top so when I wrap it, it doesn't stick to our plastic either. We're going to be waiting for about 30 minutes to make sure that our gluten starts to develop and it doubles in size. After that, we're going to do 3 bowl folds. All that means is we're going to be developing gluten while it rests. So this is a beautiful bowl of dough that has been proofing for about 40 minutes. First thing we're going to do is make sure that we don't stick to the dough. Now this is called a bowl fold. So we are going to get up under, separate our dough from the bowl, and pick it straight up. Fold that over, turn 90 degrees, and do the same thing again. We are developing gluten, and you can see already the texture of that dough has changed. So after that first fold, we're gonna take a peek and make sure that we've got a really nice texture. Everything's tucked in. Now we're gonna wait another 15 minutes and do the exact same thing. And then we're gonna wait another 15 minutes and do it again. After that third fold, we can wait up to 12 hours, even up to 3 days, depending on really how much time you have and how busy you are. And then we'll get it separated into our cast irons and baked off. This is what our dough is gonna look like after our third fold. This is nice and jiggly. It's very, very glutinous. You can see we've already made a bunch of gluten here. And what we need to do is we need to get this into our cast irons, but first we're going to cut her in half. We absolutely don't need a monstrous focaccia. So in half here, and then each one's gonna go into a cast iron that we need to oil first. We already have our cast irons prepared and oiled underneath our paper, so we're going to make sure that we are oiled over the paper as well. Now this is so we don't stick, it's so we have a little bit of fry, and it gives that lovely golden color to our edges and our crust. Now we're going to set our bread half in each cast iron, one here, and then one here. And then we get to do the fun part, which is dimpling our bread after we spread out a bit. Now, the fun thing is that you essentially get to pierce all the way through, and we're gonna brush this with oil again on the other end so it stays nice and fatty. As this proofs, all of these dimples will fill up with oil, and when it bakes, they'll fry, and you get little crispy golden pockets. We're gonna be making a couple of different toppings for this pumpkin bread, one sweet and one savory. The sweet one's gonna be pretty straightforward with a little bit of brown sugar, cinnamon, some of our smoked salt, and vanilla. This is a really simple topping that can be used for almost anything. And we're just gonna mix it up and cover our beautiful proofed focaccia with it. Oh, got a little bit right there. Now, sugar is hydrophobic, so it's going to pull all the moisture from our bread, which is a great thing if we want to dry bread. But since we don't, we're gonna take a little bit of olive oil and brush our bread before we add our topping. That's just so everything will stick, get nice and caramely, and stay where we want it to. We've just pulled this out of a long proof in the fridge. We've got it nice and jiggly, and we're going to add a little bit of olive oil to make sure that our toppings stick. It's okay if it pools up in our little dimples. That's fine. It's actually preferable a bit. It'll fry as it bakes off. And then just a nice healthy amount of brown sugar. Now I'm using brown sugar instead of white, so it goes almost caramely and toffee-like and stays nice and damp. We're also gonna finish with a handful of hazelnuts. Now you can use any nut you like. Hazelnuts just happen to be my favorite. And if for any reason you're worried about these getting a little bit too warm, we can always cover with a little bit of foil. Now let's move on to our savory option. For our savory option, we're going to be grating a little bit of garlic, actually a lot of bit of garlic, into some softly browned butter. Now the microplane takes this down really small so you don't get any big bites or big chunks. And it will open up all of our cellular structure to make it really nice and aromatic. This is the butter and the garlic that we just microplaned, and we're gonna add the rest of our hard herbs to it. Now I'm using pantry staples like dried rosemary and ground pepper. I really wanna get these hydrated in this fat, and they'll open up while they're baking and be super aromatic. With this topping, we don't need to use any of the olive oil because we have all that beautiful butter. And we're gonna finish with some really nice flaky salt. Now you can use any that you like, but I prefer Jacobson's. And they have some beautiful flavored salts that would add another layer to this great depth of flavor we're adding with this butter and rosemary and black pepper. And this is going to be so good. And I'm thinking maybe even leftover turkey sandwiches on this pumpkin focaccia with a little bit of cranberry sauce. Yum. Finishing salt is kind of like jewelry. Coco Chanel says you should take a piece off, but as you cut it, a lot of it's going to fall off. So I always go a little heavy with my salt. Today we're going to be using the Yoder Smokers YS640S pellet grill, and we're going to be baking on the top shelf today. Now later in the bake, we are going to be adding some pepitas to our savory option, and we're doing that just to make sure that they don't get too crispy. And then we're going to put these babies goodnight for about 40 minutes. The savory one is going to be finished with a little bit of pepitas, and the reason why we're waiting this long is because pepitas are really heavy on fat and will absolutely burn. Now a lot of these are probably going to end up on the table, but I do want a beautiful, rich, fatty bread. These are going to take a couple more minutes just to toast up, and then we'll pull them out when they temp at the correct temperature, which is between 185 and 200 degrees. We are going to make sure that right in the center of this bread, we are reading, boop, just at 200, which is at the top of the range. Now this is a very moist bread, so a higher temp isn't a bad thing, and these will absolutely toast up beautifully. So let's grab one at a time, and obviously everybody's gonna be hot, so we wanna pull out both of these at the same time. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make sure that this is beautiful on the inside, just like it is on the outside. Get through that center to check our bubbles, to make sure the yeast did all the farting it's supposed to do. And look at that beautiful bread. Sorry, got a little excited. Now, the first thing I'm gonna wanna do is taste it, obviously. So it is beautiful and open. We've got a really nice open crumb. It's hot as all get out, but it did beautifully. Now, I will say that I definitely burnt myself on this sugar, so please make sure you take some time and let this set. Nobody likes sugar burns. We're going to, again, just open her right up. Now with the sugar on here, it might actually take a little bit more time to bake, but that temperature came out beautiful. So again, nice and fluffy, nice and squishy. All those hazelnuts are beautifully toasted. Gonna get a little slice. And then as a pastry chef, there's a couple things I always have available. It's just a little bit of frosting. Now this is cream cheese frosting, which is probably the best bet for this. I don't know if anybody else is as excited for this as I am. You can't taste this, but I can. Here we go. All day. No reason not to. So we've got a little bit of pumpkin, a little bit of sweetness from that cream cheese, a little bit of sourness from that cream cheese. Sets really well with the cinnamon and the brown sugar. Now there is a little bit of smoked salt in this mix as well, which really brightens up that flavor profile. Works real well. All these tools and ingredients are available at atbbq.com. Thank you so much for joining us today.